The video you are about to see will serve as a very grim reminder of the very thing we have been warning you for quite some time. Our children are a target of the enemy of our souls, and he will not stop at anything to program their minds in the direction of evil. What happened in this school in Northern California can never happen at any school again. Parents, things have been real for a long time, and it's time we wake up. All right, folks, let's get into this one. Look, I want to first start off by just simply saying this. We have spent a lot of time trying to outline for you why it is so important, especially in the time and day in which we live, to homeschool your children, or if you can't homeschool your children, at least be absolutely involved in their education and what's going on. We've talked about this. The video that you are about to watch is thoroughly reprehensible. It is going to serve as direct evidence that everything we have been saying about protecting our children is real and it's true, and it is something we should all be paying attention to. This one is absolutely crazy, and we're going to get into it in just a second. But I want you to think this through for just a moment, right? If you take your children and you put them in the hands of somebody else, in many cases, people you don't even know, for anywhere from 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, you have to think that that is going to have an effect on your children, especially when at the moment they are given to these people, they are told and even required to give their undivided attention to these teachers. And if they don't give their undivided attention to these teachers, then they are strictly penalized. And the problem with that is many of these teachers are hardcore leftists that desire to communicate principles, thoughts, and ideals that you have no desire to raise your children with. As a matter of fact, what they are doing is they are programming your children into believing a series of destructive thoughts that completely take away any notion of individualism based on the fearfully and wonderfully made truth that we learn about in the Bible. They take away any opportunity or hope that children will reconcile themselves to the God that created them. They walk away from the notion of accountability. They walk away from righteousness. They walk away from the whole idea of remaining selfless and seeking to build up the people around them as an act of obedience to God in love. They walk away from all of those admirable principles and they learn to be selfish. And just the terrible and most reprehensible part of it is they learn these things and don't even understand the things that they are learning because the people that are teaching them don't understand the things that they are teaching. Case in point, the video that you're going to watch right now is a news story that reflects something that is absolutely terrible. We have talked about this. We have talked about the fact that these people who stand up for these things don't even know the very things that they are standing up for, but the communication that continues to go forth in the minds and the hearts of these kids destroys them from the inside out. Watch this video. You'll understand what I mean when I talk about this, and then I'll explain exactly what my position is here because it's important for us to articulate this clearly and effectively. Watch this.
Between Israel and Hamas is hitting home for students and parents at a school in Oakland. As KTV's Tom Vakar reports, the controversy involves a Palestinian flag on campus.
On Tuesday, Oakland freelance reporter Zach Haber posted this picture of a Palestinian flag flying over Oakland's Fremont High School courtyard. Now, it's not clear who put it up there or for how long, but many Palestinians consider this flag a symbol of their identity and freedom.
Let's not even talk about what Palestinians consider the flag to be. This is Oakland. This is in the San Francisco area. This is the state of California. The state of California requires by law that an American flag be flown at all public facilities. Let's not even get into that. Let's not even get into the obvious question, which is where is the American flag? Let's not even get into the fact that our children are being taught to hate our country because our country was founded on biblical principles, and of course they're being taught to hate God. They are flying a Palestinian flag as an action of solidarity to support the reprehensible and demonically inspired behavior of known terrorists who destroyed the lives of 1,400 innocent Jews. How about we take it a step further? How about we take it to the place that we all know it should go? In that, if you understand the Quran and you understand the communication that Hamas continues to propagate through its charter and the constant communication of what that charter is through all the different programs that they tend to deploy amongst young minds, their goal is to not only destroy every single Jewish life in existence, their goal is to also destroy American lives. All Americans. They hold fast to the very ideal that is taught to them in the Quran, and what this stands for is absolutely reprehensible. Here's the thing that's really funny, by the way. The teacher or the administrator or the person who chose to fly this flag, if you stuck them in the middle of Gaza City, they would not survive. They would not be able to survive even a moment. Watch the rest of this story.
By Wednesday, the flag was gone, but we saw some pointed social media comments such as, and people wonder why Jewish families don't feel safe in OUSD right now. Shira, a parent of Israeli Arab ethnicity, has a son in 7th grade in the Oakland Unified School District.
Pay attention to this. It's very important to understand this. Arab Israeli ethnicity. She is an Arab. You understand that? She would technically be categorized in the same group of people represented by that Palestinian flag. Listen to what she says. By the way, I always think it's interesting how the overwhelming majority of people who come from Arab backgrounds or backgrounds like mine where you're Egyptian or you come from the Middle East always seem to have a much better understanding of what's actually going on and recognizes the ridiculousness of the assertions being made by these administrators and by these influencers who are so cowardly that they won't go out in the real world and seek to influence people. Rather, they will seek to inflict a certain level of control that they can't have in the real world upon our children to try to brainwash their young, impressionable minds. That's exactly what's going on here. Listen to this.
Our students are struggling to keep up after COVID with their math and their reading, and I don't understand why this is such an issue here.
By the way, they're trying to struggle to keep up with their math and their reading. Do you blame a kid in a public school environment, especially in California, who is struggling to keep up with their math and reading when their teachers are teaching them that math is a function of white imperialism? Or that reading is a mechanism that is deployed by white imperialists to seek to separate different races? These are the assertions that these liars continue to make, and it's important for us to be able to understand what's being said here. She has got a great point. Listen to her.
And if it was about peace, there would have been an Israeli flag and a peace sign as well.
And the flag that was way up in the air?
It causes real damage on the ground to the students, and that it causes more divisiveness and puts our children in harm's way. We already have to deal with violence on school campuses, and now we're going to get into geopolitical conflict.
And by the way, when she brings up geopolitical conflict, we're not just talking about geopolitical conflict, although the mechanisms that are involved within the constructs of this particular geopolitical conflict are so uniquely complicated that the constraints by which many communicate with respect to how they represent these particular issues are very, very guarded for a reason, okay? Yet they just have no problem making these blatant statements about things by doing all these crazy things. She's right, okay? And we're not just talking about a geopolitical conflict here. We're talking about a real hardcore spiritual conflict. It is a battle between good and evil. Very important that we understand this. Angels and demons.
Zoya Vase is a Walnut Creek mom with 6 children and stepchildren whose family migrated from Russia to flee anti-Semitism there.
It is very clear when you fly a Palestinian flag over a public school that you are taking a stance. If they were taking a humanitarian approach and their resolutions and their thoughts and their ideas were around bringing home hostages, we're around peace as a whole in the region, that would be one thing. But they're clearly taking a stand.
Another post, you rarely see the American flag in classrooms and the teachers on the American dream. In fact, neither school flagpole that we saw had the American flag, though California law requires it during school hours, weather permitting.
To see that one-sided response and to have an educational foundation behind it, and to have it be, driven as a, hey, this is what we want to teach the next generation.
Our messages to the public information officer of the Oakland Unified School District, despite being placed early in the day, went unanswered.
I think it's disgusting that those call outs for an interview go unanswered. It's our taxpayer dollars that pay for these people, and we need to wake up as parents because we are paying for these children, our children, to be brainwashed. We need to stop for one moment and reflect upon the very principles that these liars are seeking to communicate, and we need to do everything within our power to protect the minds and the hearts of our children. Folks, listen to me, and listen to me good. As a pastor and as a shepherd, let me explain something to you as parents. You have an obligation to shepherd your children. You have an obligation to be their protectors. You have an obligation to be their providers. You have an obligation to stand up for them in their greatest state of vulnerability, that in the most impressionable years, you are the person that they are supposed to be going to, and you are the people that are supposed to be teaching your children what righteousness is all about. I oftentimes think about my grandmother. By the way, many of you know I've talked about this. My mother and father were both born and raised in Egypt. My grandmother, on my father's side, during the time of the 67 war and the war in 73, when Egypt was very, very much engaged in war with Israel. Do you know what my grandma did? My grandma, full-blooded Egyptian, her country is going to war with Israel, told my father and all of his siblings, my aunts and uncles, you are not allowed to listen to Egyptian radio. She made them listen to Israeli radio because she said that the Egyptians were lying. That is a mother that stood up for the mental, spiritual, and physical well-being of her children. She fought for every last bit of what she knew she needed to fight for, because she knew that the things that she did with her children in that moment would have a great effect on the legacy of the family that God had given her and entrusted her with. Well, my grandfather was preaching the gospel throughout the whole region there in Egypt. My grandmother was standing by his side and teaching her children, my father, my uncles, and my aunts, the true difference between right and wrong. We have an obligation, folks, to stand. We have an obligation to tell the truth. We have an obligation for the sake of our children to raise them up in the ways of the Lord. I'm telling you, everything is at stake. Everything is at stake. More than ever today, we are living in a time of what I would call end times anti-Semitism. We're living in a time of end times persecution of Christians. It's only going to increase. And the only way we're going to be able to prepare our children for the times that are coming and the times that have arrived is to continue to exhort them in the truth and to teach them, you are the most important person in your child's life. You are the one that makes the biggest difference. It's time to take a stand for truth and righteousness. God bless you guys. And by the way, may God bless you and keep you and strengthen you in taking a stand for the very lives of our future generations.